You mentioned that it was very hard to lose weight, right, with the depot.
Depot
And
seems to be the worst.
yeah, and I'm just curious, people talk about ultimately with weight gain and weight loss, calories in, calories out. If you're having a hard time gaining or losing, you're
Sure.
changing some side of that equation. What
Yes.
what is changing there that makes it
Well,
so hard?
that's okay. So this is probably the main topic people want to hear about. Then I'll touch on athletic stuff since we don't have forever. So, birth control has there's a long-standing belief that it causes weight and fat gain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, remember those first sets of pills, they use very high amounts of estrogen. Like they used to use like 150 micrograms of synthetic estrogen. Now they use between 15 and 25. Right? The doses were brought, and they still get the same cycle control. Estrogen can cause water retention, so that's super high dose. There's no telling what it was doing. The early progestins were very, very, very nasty. So they've done a lot of work on, birth control and weight gain, typically. And they've compared all kinds of different forms. Sometimes they compare them to each other, compare them to like non-hormonal methods. And on average, the weight gain seems to be about 2 or 3 pounds. However, the average belies the individual, right? Like we talked about hypertrophy. And when I looked into this, I was mind blown because the variance in some of these studies, when they presented the individual data, like the average weight gain, 2 pounds. But women would go from losing 16 pounds to gaining 30, right? So what happens, right? You have 10 who lose and 10 who gain.
Yeah.
Boom. The average is 0, but the individual variance is staggering. In one paper, I want to say one woman gained like 60 pounds in a year. And I don't even know how maybe it's 30 pounds in a year. Regardless,
Either way, crazy.
It was nuts, right? But in one of the studies, they compared it to the copper IUD, right? A non-hormonal method. The copper IUD had the same variance. 16 pounds lost versus 16 pounds gained.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it becomes very difficult to blame the hormones but this is in the general public. This is in an uncontrolled eating and activity situation. When you got that level of variance, it could just be aging, right? Lots of things, we typically gain weight as we age. What's probably happening, and again, don't mishear me, I'm not saying women, it's all in your heads. I'm not dismissing individual experiences. But what the research suggests is that birth control gets the blame when it may not be the cause. Now, some physicians think that some women are more or less prone to it, right? What tends to happen, there's a very big internet selection bias we forget about.
Sure.
If you Google birth control and weight gain, you will hear, it will seem like 100% of women are gaining weight. You know why? Because women who lose weight don't talk about it, right? They don't go post their positive experiences, by and large. So it makes it sound like 100, but it's not. You're hearing about the same like any diet. You go to any diet forum, all you hear about is people having problems. Oh my God, dieting is impossible for everyone. No, you're not hearing about people who are succeeding because they're not asking questions because they're not having problems. So I think you've got a lot of it. And there's been a couple of, and I'll come back to the depot, I promise. There's been 2 studies I'm aware of looking at athletes specifically, and a couple others that just measured body comp. And they were both in runners, unfortunately. But presumably athletes are controlling their food intake and their activity to a much greater degree than the general public. And they found essentially no effect. Right now, the synthetic estrogen may cause 2 or 3 pounds, but in the studies, when women go off it, they lose it in a month. It's obviously water weight. Usually the studies that find the biggest problem use high-dose progestins. And I actually, I left another bit out about combined birth control and oral that I didn't want. There's even 4 different types. Monophasic, which keeps the hormones the same all month. Biphasic, which raises the progestin once. Triphasic, which stair steps it. And quadriphasic, which raises it 4 times. Oral birth control is a nightmare. There's so many variations of possibilities. But whenever I looked at the research, those triphasics, the one that had a very high progestin week, those have, because progestins are nasty. They tend to stimulate fat gain, stimulate hunger, tend to cause muscle breakdown. The studies that find the biggest are the ones that use those triphasic high progestin components. But by and large, estrogen causes a little bit of weight gain. One study in triphasic, the women, it was athletes, they gained 2 or 3 pounds of fat, lost a couple pounds of muscle, which admittedly is not a good thing as a female athlete. But of course, even that, we know that weight gain doesn't tell the whole story. If If you gain 2 pounds of muscle, lose 2 pounds of fat, your body weight's the same. If you lose 2 pounds of muscle and gain 2 pounds of fat as an athlete, that's a bad thing. Anyway, the monophasic, by and large, especially the newer ones, just don't seem to have the problem, especially when activity is controlled. And I've talked to coaches, you've talked to coaches, and they're like, yeah, trainers are like, their clients by and large don't seem to have a problem if activity and diet is controlled. There was one study looking at physique competitors, about half of whom were on birth control, maybe a little more. They all made it to contest. So like there doesn't seem to be okay, so Depo, what's the problem with Depo? Even strength, well, it's a high potency progestin. It's one of the nastiest ones, this nasty first generation high dose. So that ties in with that triphasic. High progestin levels without estrogen is just a problem, right? Because also remember, combined birth control is tanking both your hormones, woman's hormones, but it's replacing both of them.
Right.
Progestin only are tanking both of her hormones and only replacing one. And estrogen has a lot of very beneficial effects. It's another, given the choice, I would prefer women use a combined to a progestin only. There are some medical situations where is indicated, but by and large, I think combined is superior. For that reason, progestin tends to cause more side effects too. Anyway, so Depo is this high potency, progestin only. What's bizarre, if you give it a certain point of the cycle, it actually raises metabolic rate by about 5%. So what the hell is going on? Because of what progestins do to a woman's body, it was shown to, as they put it, increase attention to palatable foods. Right now, these studies are goofy as hell. What they do is they like diet people down and they show you pictures of either like boring foods or tasty foods.
Yeah.
And they look at how quickly your attention goes to one or the other. Right now, you've dieted to low levels of body fat. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You're walking down the street and there's a picture, there's a muffin, there's like a cookie store. You just know it's there, right? You're in it's neurochemical, it's biological. Your entire system is attuned to find calories now. Depo, so Depo is probably just increasing food intake.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things that becomes a pretty strong biological drive. And I just think the other negatives on bone mineral density and everything else just make it. It would never be my first choice. If it can avoid it. Like if you just, there's no other option for some reason, I would say, so it probably is to the energy balance equation. I mean, you can see weird partitioning stuff, you know, that outside of calorie, depending on where the calories get sent. And the progestins, even in the second half of the menstrual cycle, do tend to like activate specifically fat storage in the thighs and tend to inhibit muscle protein synthesis. And yeah, it's just nasty. But by and large, assuming, you know, food and exercise are controlled, the effects seem to be pretty small. Like I said, estrogen causes a little water weight gain. How important that is to you as an individual thing, right? If you are an athlete, a runner or a cyclist for whom body weight is critical, that may matter. If you're a weight class athlete, like a power lifter or MMA or someone who has to Olympic lifter, that may matter because that makes it harder for you to make weight for your class. For everyone else, I mean, we know that women tend to get, you know, some sports have an aesthetic component, and people want to be puffy and a little bit, you know, like if you're a jumper, that little bit of extra weight. If you're an ice figure skater, getting 2 or 3 extra pounds off the ice, it matters.
Yeah.
But you can go off that and it goes away very, very quickly. You know, as far as the fat gain, I think as long as you avoid the high progestin third, you know, that triphasic and Depo doesn't seem to be that big of an issue. And like, I wish they would study weight training. I wish they would do this a little bit more consistently, but they just haven't.